Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I'd like to do on my show? Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on a fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Robert McGuiness, and we'll be talking about his book, The Attenuating Puritan. So get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today.
How are you today, doctor?
I am well. Thank you for asking. I am so excited to have you back on the show to talk about this book. I think that we are in for great conversation. Now, just in
Wonderful.
case we have some new viewers of the program today, they may not be familiar with you or your work. So, first question, tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you you?
Well, my name's Robert McGuiness. I was born on Long Island in New York, and I went to school at Smithtown High School. Um, Early after high school, I moved out to the West Coast. I initially did a bunch of backpacking, and I ended up settling here and living off the grid. And for years, I lived off the grid. And then we had a tragedy in the family, and it forced me to move into town. So ever since I've been there, and I love it. Life is good.
Hmm. Well, I can definitely understand having some off grid time. I think that everyone should, if they can't do it full time, at least take some vacation time to just do away with all of those things that connect us to our rat race, that connect us to life, and step away and just get some fresh air, clean water, and some detox time, and just enjoy the all that God has given us. So I applaud you there. I agree 100%. Now, when it comes to being an author, is this something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that this was one way for you to not only share your knowledge base, but also be creative and share your stories?
Well, I used to dabble with lyrics and little poems, an occasional short story, but I never um, was inspired to publish. And I really felt um, almost a duty to remain quiet and silent. And as I got older and wanted to leave something behind, and as I looked at the world, I realized that some teaching needs to happen, and there's things that we learn as we get older that we need to pass down to the youth. And all of a sudden, I felt it was urgent to say something. And it went against most of my adult life, my value set. And then I found myself saying that if you don't say something now, it's going to be too late. And then maybe that's not me being zen at that point and needing to make a change. But most of my early life, I felt like not to give or take information because it wasn't accepting what we were given.
Mhm.
So,
And it is so interesting that you say that, because leaving a legacy or asking the question of what will your legacy be is something that I talk about so many times. It tends to be more on the business side of interviews that I do. But you are so right. Our the ways that we process things change as we age, mature, and gain wisdom. And I think that as we get older, we should share the wisdom that we have picked up, the lessons that we have picked up along the way, and share them with the next generation. You are so right there. Now, when it comes to the title of this book, I find that many times an author will have a working title while they're in the process of writing. Some will say, nope, the title came to me first, and some kind of way I wrote a book around that title. Tell us about the background of the title of this book.
well, I might stumble there because I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg. But I had something that I'd been toying with almost in a comical sense. And it was this character that had a British accent that was perhaps an older Shakespearean actor. And he'd say, and though I am pure in thought, word, and deed, my behaviors occasionally reflect the toxins my forefathers have bequeathed. O Lord, must I do the do? Brominated vegetable oil binds to my iodide receptors, attenuating in my thyroid and mimicking schizophrenia. And though I have a pineal gland as large as a grapefruit, I'm uncertain if it's from the ritual fluoridations or a true gift from you, my Lord, of spiritual wealth. Your disciple, grows weary and must seek repose. With every breath, attenuating. With each and every thirst that is quenched, attenuating. And with every gift from thy bounty, attenuating. Purity through me, onward toward the divine. Amen. So
Hmm.
that was the character that I initially um, had uh, had the conception of, and um, using the word attenuate as he's breathing the air and pulling in the toxins, or drinking a glass of water and pulling in the toxins. It just made it that he was seeking to be as pure as he could, and it was really an excuse in a comic sense. The barn door is wide open, as if you can say that he's a Puritan, and yet his behaviors are um, all over the place because of the different toxins he's consuming. So, um, and I haven't really even begun with this character because there is just so many opportunities, um, and I really look forward to it. But as I do it, as I really look at the the Mountain Dew, is that they found the BVOs, the brominated vegetable oils, do attenuate in the thyroid and do mimic schizophrenia. And our society is all about doing the do without any regard for what we're actually doing to ourselves, our temples. So reminding people that these are our temples and the Lord will take care of us, and that we have a high capacity to run our micro machinery. We always talk about cell activity and stuff. The fluoride um, uh, can bind with two aluminums and bind where the third phosphate goes in a they use it for neurologic testing. And that phosphate group in the guanines can trade place with the adenosine phosphate groups. So it binds up the energy coin of the biologic world. The ATP is responsible for more than 60 cellular functions. So when you're thinking about
Yes.
the energy of a cell for a Puritan, you're thinking about many little pieces of machinery that can move toxins, that can
Yes.
catabolize toxins. So having faith in our ability to absorb,
Yes.
attenuate,
Yes.
and
Absolutely.
catabolize.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have to take all of those bits and pieces into consideration. You are so right. I can see how you can definitely be able to expound on this character. That means that we have something to look forward to. I love it. Now, even though this book is a fictional, I still like to ask the question of what is the most proper way to read the book. Many times when the author has presented more of a reference book, you can thumb through and find where you need to jump in. But many times with novels, we should read it from start to finish. But every author has the right to write their book the way that they wish to. What is the best way to consume this story? Should we start with page first, or can the reader start anywhere?
I think you could start anywhere, but it makes sense to start in the beginning and go to the end. It seems as a fish in a fishbowl. We normally would swim up to the glass, to the edge of our environment. And I think there's been a westward migration for thousands and thousands of years. So we end up traveling westward. He's starting the first, I think, reference in the book um, where I mentioned by name is probably Love Canal. So he's like starting in the east, and then he goes to Flint, Michigan, and to Minnesota. Then he travels south to Oklahoma, and then continues west to Arizona and Colorado, and eventually to California. So I think the um, geography is from one coast to the other, you know. But I think the timeline is there too. Is each time he gets involved with something over his head, he has another um, problem that he needs to solve in himself, you know. So he ends up with cancer a couple times. He has liver failure from attenuating. He's breathing in radiated soil. You know, there's a lot of different things, and I try to show the degradation of not just the place that we live in, but the spirit in which we live in it, you know, and our mental health being constantly under attack and at risk. And um, you know, he writes notes to himself sometimes so he can remember who he is and where he's going because he knows he's going to get himself um, in a bind and he doesn't know what's going to happen from there. So he needs to be able to have markers along the way so he can find himself back to himself. Um, I think that's important for a lot of people because we can get down a path and then not be able to return and find out what our mission is, what our direction is, and those sorts of things. Another thing that plays prominent in the beginning is I say that he had ADD or ADHD and maybe was slightly autistic. Um, I said that he was
Mhm.
on psych meds early on because there was
Now, now, in doing that, in creating this character, why was it important to give him the characteristics in which you gave him? Now, I'm going to make this disclaimer, so I make sure we have it throughout the interview, and that is, if you want to know the all about the book, then of course you're going to have to purchase a copy. But I do want to give you an opportunity to explain why was it important to give him these characteristics.
well, there was a couple different reasons. One is um, to show that we used to have autism 1 in 100,000 live births, and now we're down to 1 in 100. And something's making that happen, you know. So is if if we want to say that it's the environment, we can say the environment. If it's something that we're eating or medications or something like that, we really need to find the root causes and try to understand that and explain it. Um, if we look at genetic anomalies, then we're looking at potential birth defects. We're looking at cancer situations, you know, and they're all at our fingertips, and all the answers are right here. And it seems like maybe individuals are highly motivated to find them, but it seems like the corporate world is too busy, and we in that world are expendable and replaceable. And, you know, so there's a lot of, we put money more important than life itself. And personally, I have a problem with that, you know, so, you know, we're trying to fix that.
I
And then,
definitely understand. And we do have to ask the questions that we need to ask to make sure that we are consuming and
well,
being the best people that we can possibly be. I agree with you there. Well, it is time for us to take a very short break. And we know that this book is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. But if you will, can you remind everyone if they want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to do that?
RobertMcGuinnessBooks.com.
I love it. All righty, everyone. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. Now, we had to go quickly to commercial, but I wanted to jump back into that conversation. You have given us a full featured character in this particular book, but I wanted to give you a little bit more time there to explain why he has the personality that he has. Please continue.
Okay, well, the ADD and the possible on the autism spectrum were important to me, not just to show what's happening to us as society, but to for character development, And I wanted someone that could get stuck somewhere. And his getting stuck was on cleaning up the Garden of Eden, and it was a mission that he couldn't separate himself from. And even when he didn't know why, he was stuck on it. And, I don't know if it goes with intellectualism or anything like that, or spiritualism, but there's a real alienation and a real alienation that happens in the autistic world as well, where you don't see what anyone else is up to. You are just focused on yourself and working on that. So I kind of wanted to bring that into the character and show not only perhaps damage that's been done to us as a race, but also what happens to people that become isolated in that, you know, um, where he has no one to relate to, basically. He's looking for answers, but when he starts out on his trek, he is by himself, and there's um, no no support system for him, and he just looks like another. They actually set up a website and they put a tracking device on him and a camera, and if you can get him to do something stupid, they put it on the web where they could get cash incentives. And he's the only one that doesn't know he's on film. He's the only one that doesn't know that he's being tracked, and um, they end up setting up a flash mob at one point where 10,000 people show up. And he's wondering why all these people are taking pictures and asking him to do stupid stuff.
Now, when it comes to speaking of real life, how much of your book, if any, is based off of real life experiences? Is this something that is totally and completely out of your imagination, or were you inspired perhaps by other people? And many times, and the reason why I ask that is that we have some very famous celebrities. Tyler Perry is one that says that the character of Medea isn't just one person. It is like his grandmother, his aunt, and then several church ladies that he grew up with. And that is how he kind of meshes them all together. Is your creation of this character similar to that as well?
I never really thought about it like that. And I think the spiritual part of it had to do with me being raised Catholic when I was young. So there's a lot of church references and things like that. But some of the situations early on where we're talking about contaminated well water leading to someone needing to be on psych meds, that was someone that I knew that was on the West Coast. Then kids riding the bicycle behind a truck spraying DDT. That was friends of mine when I was a little kid on the East Coast, you know. So they're kind of blended into contaminated waters on both coasts, and anomalies on both coasts. Most of the people are, or all of the people in the book are fictitious. All of the places are real. So when I'm talking about a dump or something like that, all those places are real places. It's just the people that are made up, and the story itself, that the travels of the guy is made up. So it's a blend of that, and it's I didn't really, whether they're other people or they're myself, they're all my own observations.
So, as you were mentioning that, it made me think about if you were a child growing up in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, then you have a very different childhood than those of the 90s and the early 2000s. Because I think if you are a child of 60s, 70s, and 80s, you remember, depending on where you lived, you remember them spraying for mosquitoes in the summertime, or you remember the lake being a particular way when you would visit, especially during the summer, how that would look, or going to the mountains, are various things that we did, how the world felt, and how it smelled, and how we had a relationship with it. But the 90s and the early 2000s, we started to see that there were drastic changes. So you are definitely right. I think anyone who Googles it, you can find a white paper from someone somewhere that is saying our world is starting to change, and why is that? So you are definitely on to something there. Now, with this particular book, what do you hope is something that the reader takes away from it? What is a nugget of wisdom, or just a pin of curiosity that you hope they pick up?
Well, to me, almost every page has something like that that I'm hoping is picked up. Um, First off is I have this person that is willing to sacrifice himself, and that is paramount. And um, I reference Brother Nut in the book a couple times, and Brother Nut was a Chinese artist, and he vacuumed the air pollution and made bricks out of it. And and that was his artwork. But the Puritan looks at him as another attenuator, and that he's taken on this job because he's a little autistic, he doesn't get everything right. He's thinking this guy is going to vacuum the entire air from the planet, you know? And it's a job that we couldn't fathom doing in a thousand lifetimes. But the Puritans thinking, here we have another attenuator and he's cleaning up. So I have this character that is going to clean up the Garden of Eden, and he starts out believing he's the only one on the mission, and he's going to clean. And instead of, initially I thought about having the 99 percenters round up the one percenters and then put the genes in them so they can digest plastic and banish them to the islands of trash, to eat the trash. And I thought, that makes a world a war story. It makes all these great action movie type things, but it doesn't teach the lesson of being responsible and being an individual that dares to bear the weight of the world, whether he gets it done, whether he gets anyone else to help. He is going to actually bear the grunt of the burden himself. And he's not going to regret it. And he's not going to worry about his health. And he knows that he has faith and that spiritually he has support. Um, but it's a job that he doesn't shy away from, and he doesn't quit, and he moves forward. And that's, one of the big messages is that if we all just do a little bit, then there's messages about consuming less, and really get into the world counts and the dials that are spinning for how much forever chemicals are being made and how many plastics are being made. They just identified more than 14,000 plastics associated with food wrappers and found more than 3,600 microplastics in the human body. At the end of my story, him, and at this point, he has a young wife. They go to a genetics lab and put the genes in them to digest plastic. And they sail off into the sunset to start eating the islands of trash. And in my sequel, I elaborate on that a little bit, and actually do some of the mechanics of how that would happen so we could understand what that happens. And I don't want to just be dry in that, so I have to make it a little bit humorous so it's readable. But that's the mission that they're on, and they're um, not afraid to embrace it. And they never have to get done. They just have to be that spark of hope, that spark of um, change, And like I said, it's if everybody puts something down, quits one behavior, picks something up, it wouldn't take very long for us to reverse it. At one point, he's having a sermon, which I call the Sermon on the Mount, or the Sermon on the Heap, rather, because he went to a landfill to get away from a flash mob that someone created. And he climbs up on a pile of trash. And he's telling people is that, do you know you have more than 400 carcinogenic chemicals in your body that didn't exist 100 years ago? So he's explaining that to them. And he says, is your portfolio worth 20 years of your children's life? Is it worth your grandchildren? And it's just seeding with one sentence. The ability is watch where you put your money, watch what you do with it, because there are safe venues for that. And then there's ones that, yes, you're making money, but you're not helping anything,
Yeah.
and
You know,
that's
I think your book is definitely on to something, and I think that our next generation, especially our Gen Zers, are going to find some attraction to this because they are calling us to task. They are asking us to make sure that we are doing all that we possibly can to save our environment, to save our planet, so that we can help save ourselves. And I have to agree with you. My grandmother's peach is not the same peach that I am eating. And if we can all do something to make sure that the next generation, that our grandchildren's grandchildren are living on the best earth that they can possibly live on, then we are contributing to an awesome and amazing legacy. Robert, thank you
absolutely,
so much
absolutely.
for coming on and challenging us, for reminding us, and for inspiring us with this book. Now, we know, of course, that your book is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold, but if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
Again, Robert McGuiness Books, the Facebook page, and I'm there. I believe there's another one, author Robert McGuiness, that I can be reached at. And you can look me up in the phone book.
I
and I'll
love it.
and
I
I'll pick
love
up the
it.
phone.
Thank you again for being a guest on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, doctor. I really, really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And viewers, we thank you for joining us today as well. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to spend it with me, and I thank you for doing so. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye bye.